Hi, I'm Simone from the Oxford Cooking School, and today I'd like to talk to you about some alternative backings that we can use for our punch needle projects. Of course, monk's cloth is the gold standard for a punch needle backing, especially monk's cloth that's made specifically for punch needle. It has all the properties we want to see in a foundation backing. It is strong, it's sturdy, it's a little bit stretchy, it has the right hole spacing to grab those loops and hold them in place, and it's incredibly forgiving should we make a mistake and need to pull out and re-punch. But that doesn't mean it's the only thing that we can use to punch into. Let's take a look at what some of those other options are. We have linen. Linen is made for rug hooking or for punch needle. And this is a primitive linen, which means that it has around 12 threads per inch in a nice even over and under weave. And it's a single thread for every one of those over and under, unlike monk's cloth that has the double. Primitive linen works well with a regular punch needle and rug yarns. It also works with a fine punch needle and some fine fibers. Linen isn't as stretchy as monk's cloth, so sometimes we can have a little bit of problem with our loops staying in, or it can be a little bit more challenging should we make some mistakes and need to pull out and repunch, because those threads don't always bounce back quite the same way. If you're wanting a linen that has a slightly tighter weave to it, you can explore traditional linen. This has around 13 threads per inch, making the holes a little bit tighter together. This is going to hold those finer fibers in place, and it has all the lovely properties that primitive does, just a slightly tighter weave. The linens come in different colors. The standard one that we see is a natural linen, and that might vary between this very light beigey brown into a more darker brown color. But you can also sometimes find a bleached linen or a mixed linen that is a mixture of a natural thread and a bleached thread. Linen can be a little bit more challenging to transfer your pattern onto, since the pattern doesn't always show through it the same way when we put it on a light table like it does the monk's cloth. But you can still see it through, and you can still draw on it just the same as you would with a Sharpie marker. Let's look at another option. Here we have rugwarp, and rugwarp is very similar to monk's cloth in the sense that it is made of 100% cotton most of the time. And the rugwarp differs from monk's cloth in that it is comprised of a single weave, so one over and one under, that is a single thread. And that thread is very, very thick. It is a much thicker backing than monk's cloth is. Still strong and sturdy, doesn't have quite the same level of stretch, but there's still a little bit to it. It's usually comprised of 11 to 13 threads per inch. And because it's a little bit thicker, it can be a little bit more tiring to punch into it. It takes a little bit more force to get that punch needle down through the rugwarp, but it still holds our loops really well and makes a nice, sturdy, strong backing. The next one I have to show you today is a little bit more of an unusual choice. This is a fabric called Verel, and Verel is unique in the sense that it is not made for rug hooking. It is not intended to be used as a rug hooking backing. It is an upholstery fabric made primarily for office furniture and areas that need to have a fabric that is going to take a lot of wear and tear. The nice part about Verel is the fabric itself is quite beautiful, meaning that you can punch just a motif and then leave the background bare. You don't have to fill the whole area in. And that way people make shawls and ponchos and those kind of projects with the Verel, and they do their punching into it, and that way they only have to punch that motif. The weave of the Verel is also very tight. It's close together. It is a little bit harder to see the holes, and it can be a little bit more challenging to get our stitch spacing correct. So you do want to make sure that you are very experienced and comfortable with the ideal row spacing and stitch gauge with other fabrics first before you venture into the world of things like Verel. The downside to Verel is that it is a synthetic fiber. That means that when we go to steam our projects, we can actually melt them if we have Verel as our backing. So we need to be very cautious and careful with them when we go and do that part of our projects. Next, let's look at another unusual one, but one that can be really fun to work with. And this is wool fabric. Wool fabric that is a flannel weight with a very tight weave to it. It makes a really fun backing to punch into. This one has been hand dyed, so we get this beautiful modeling texture to it, making it very lovely showcase all on its own. That washing process and dyeing process tighten those fiber up even more so that it's slightly fulled, and again, will make it very easy to punch into. It holds our loops quite nicely, especially when we're punching with a fine needle and the finer yarns, because it isn't going to make as big of a hole in the fabric. The problem that we can have with punching into wool fabric is that once we've created a hole, it can be much harder to get that hole to close back up again. So it's often a one and done process. So do be sure that you are really confident and comfortable, again, with your stitch spacing or your row spacing before you venture into the attempt of punching into wool and using wool fabric as your foundation. The beautiful part about using the wool fabric as your foundation is that, again, you can just punch the motif and then all the rest can stay plain as the fabric. And then this makes sewing our projects together really easily. So if you're wanting to create clothing or a pillow, we can then just sew along with our sewing machine and you don't have any loops getting in the way. As I said, this one is a hand-dyed fabric. There's another hand-dyed one that you could punch into, but we can also punch directly into wool fabrics that are plaids or tartans or herringbones, all those different ones, as long as they are that flannel weight, that they have a nice tight weave. And again, usually washing them and drying them first will really help with that process too, to tighten it all up before we punch into it. So it's another really fun alternative that allows us to create some really interesting projects for our punch needle. I hope you enjoyed exploring these different fabrics for our foundation fabrics today, and I hope you have fun playing and trying them out. Wishing you all very happy punching.